Hello and welcome into this week's episode of the Everyday Strength Podcast. Today's topic is sleep, and more importantly, sleep deprivation, and how even mild acute sleep deprivation has just profound impacts on your performance and your ability to train and perform appropriately and optimally. So how bad truly is one night? That's kind of the main topic, the main kind of overarching theme is how bad is one bad night of sleep for your performance, for your health overall. And so today we're going to break down what some of the science says about sleep deprivation, even discussing numbers, discussing the various changes that occur within the body, from hormones, right, to reaction time, to your cognitive functioning, even to your strength outcomes and your strength performances. So I want to give you kind of the breakdown on that, and then also go through a few quick ways on how you can train smarter, how you can kind of optimize, whether through supplementation or other ways, your performance, even when sleep has gone sideways. So let's start by diving into the physiology of sleep loss. Okay, sleep by and of itself is a recovery system for your body. Okay. During sleep, your body is repairing tissues, hormones are repairing various, things that have broken down throughout the day. You're forming new neurological connections. It's a very, very important process. Sleep is, okay, especially 8 hours. Okay. The literature strongly, and the science, the evidence just strongly supports a good, solid night of 8 hours of sleep. Right. I've read a book called kind of Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker that outlines the various detrimental impacts that a lack of sleep can have on the body. And that's just kind of a great resource, especially if you're at all interested in sleep and interested in this topic, to dive into, in a very well-written structure all about sleep. Okay. How to sleep, why we sleep, all of these various elements to it. But just knowing that, sleep is super important for our body. We all know that. We've all heard it. We're probably inundated with it to the point where we don't even care anymore, and we're just not going to sleep because we don't want to, right? We've heard it so much that we're so sick of it. We're just gonna fight that, right? But from a realistic standpoint, missing even just one night of sleep sets you up for a huge biological disadvantage the following day. During sleep, your nervous system, your hormones, your cells, they are all repairing. They're all recovering. They're all resetting throughout the night. Okay. One night of less than 5 hours of sleep can cause, your testosterone to drop by numbers of like 5 to 10%. Your growth hormone, that output that occurs throughout the night is nearly halved. Your cortisol levels are going to be increased. Your sympathetic tone is going to be elevated. And you're also going to reduce your body's ability to resynthesize glycogen. So that ultimately means that your muscles, right, are starting the day underfueled. So fueling is so important. We get into that. And by impairing that ability, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of failure. In terms of the brain, okay, this takes an even bigger hit, where your reaction time slows, almost like intoxication levels. After being awake for more than 24 hours, your reaction time is comparable to that of someone who has a blood alcohol content of around 0.08, which is the legal limit, okay? You are legally drunk from fatigue. Even worse, your decision-making starts to be impaired. This impacts what you eat, how you fuel, the decisions that you make throughout the day. And it can also slow motor learning. So how does this all impact our strength and our performance, our power performance? Okay, the research has strongly shown that max strength often dips around 3 to 5% after just a single bad night of sleep. More repeated outputs, so like repetitions, total power output, like sprints, Olympic lifts, even metabolic conditioning sessions, those can be impaired by even more, 8 to 15%. And your coordination and motor unit recruitment starts to get very, very sloppy. Okay, you'll feel off. You'll almost feel a lot of times dizzy or woozy or not be able to balance as well. So single leg work, right? You'll notice it really heavily during that type of unilateral work where you know that something is off, you know that you're impaired a little bit. Okay, ultimately what this all means, right? Weights are going to feel heavier. The exertion level that you require, the RPE, is going to be higher because you're more fatigued. Okay, your body's not able to send the signal. Your brain is basically blunting the signal going to the muscles because of the fatigue. Okay, that same, say you were programmed to do something, at 80% of your 1RM, that might almost feel like a max on that day. Okay, for just one rep. So, knowing this allows you to modify training in a way to still get benefit from your training session, but not run the risk of injury, which injury risk, in and of itself also skyrockets as you are sleep deprived or even just from lack of sleep. Okay. So whenever we're, going through a strength session, okay, we can still train. It's not the end of the world. A lot of times, we are forced to be sleep deprived. It's just a fact of life. We don't want to get to that point, but sometimes you are sleep deprived. So what are some ways that we can adjust training, whether you're a coach, whether you're programming for yourself, maybe a personal trainer? Okay. We may want to focus more on speed and technique work. Okay. Lighten the load a little bit. Let's go through something powerfully. You may not still be, able to produce that same amount of power as you would if you were fresh, but knowing that you are going to be able to still get the lift in, under lessened, under a greater fatigued state is going to still be important. Other factors is we might want to skip going to failure. Okay. Especially if we're talking heavyweight where you're maybe going up to 90%, 95%, right? Because again, your risk of injuring yourself now has elevated. 1RMs are not dangerous in and of themselves, but whenever the other factors, fueling, hydration, or in this case, sleep deprivation is at play, now that risk starts to rise. Okay. So we want to skip some of that stuff. We might want to skip some of the harder conditioning sessions. How is conditioning? How is endurance training? The cardio side of things. How is that impacted by sleep deprivation? Aerobic performance especially is going to be very sensitive to sleep debt. Okay. You're going back to RPE. You're going to be working at a higher RPE at a given workload when you're sleep deprived than when you're not. Okay. Time to exhaustion. That type of work can drop by upwards of 5 to 10%. Right? Your perceived exertion is going to increase even though your physiological output is consistent and it stayed the same as what you've done when you get a normal night's sleep. Okay, it's also going to shift your body's substrate utilization. So what fuel are you burning to power that exercise? You'll become more carb dominant, right? You have elevated cortisol. You have impaired insulin sensitivity. So you're more carb dominant and less fat oxidation is going to occur during more of that aerobic work. Then also cortisol is increased. Adrenaline is a little bit higher. So that means your heart rate is going to be slightly more elevated at rest and during training. So take all these into consideration and just know that when you're starting a session, say you're on a bike and you normally can pedal at 120 watts and kind of stay within that zone 2, 120 watts may be maybe zone 3, middle of zone 3, right? Because you are fatigued, your heart rate now has to elevate to be able to keep up and meet the demands that your body is requiring of it. Okay. From a coaching standpoint here, okay, we want to, stay more on the aerobic side. You might have to run at a slower pace or cycle at a lower wattage, just to dial back that intensity a little bit to still hit the goal of the day. And again, we want to prioritize our technique. We want to focus on the intention of the movement. We can do breath work. We can focus on our cadence. Even like nasal breathing, focused sessions are very, very helpful with this type of sleep deprivation. Now, from a cognitive and an emotional impact, this is going to impact more things outside the gym than inside the gym. But performance is more than just what we do inside the gym, right? It's decision making, it's your emotional regulation, it's your ability to focus and be motivated and be disciplined. And so, sleep deprivation impacts the prefrontal cortex. That's that decision making part of the brain, and that slows down. Okay, the amygdala becomes hyperreactive, so you're going to get more frustrated more quickly. You're going to have more poor judgment. You're also going to, just start to skip things throughout the workout or that's when motivation and discipline start to break. Our ability to stick to our standards starts to degrade because now we are saying, I got to get this workout in. I can just skip the warm up, right? Maybe I'm going to raid the pantry because I'm tired and I want to snack before I go work out, and that's going to help me go through this. Maybe you skip meals if you're the opposite, right? Maybe you're going to push even though you shouldn't. Maybe you're going to say, hey, I should be hitting this weight on this movement and I can't get it today. I'm going to go again, right? I'm going to try to get that weight. And then again, that's when injury occurs. Okay. So sleep deprived brains overestimate the effort and they underestimate your performance potential. So you don't just feel tired, but you actually almost become a worse version of yourself, right? You're more irritable, you're more frustrated, you're more forgetful. Because of that, now you're going to take it out on other elements, whether it's in the gym, at work, in your personal life. So this is, again, going back to the importance of a good quality night's sleep, going through sleep hygiene. And that's not a topic for today, but sleep hygiene, how are we sleeping? How are we getting a good amount of sleep is super, super important. So with sleep deprivation, what are some kind of practical strategies? And I really want to touch on creatine first, just because I think there's some really neat kind of emerging evidence that shows that it can actually maybe improve your ability to function throughout the day, especially during cognitively demanding tasks whenever you are sleep deprived. So I want to kind of talk through a little bit about that. We know generally, especially if you're already taking creatine, general recommendations are anywhere from 3 to 5 grams a day. That's kind of that maintenance. Okay. Whenever a lot of people will start, especially if they need to supersaturate, their muscles and their cells with creatine quickly, they will take more of a loading dose of about 20 grams. And what the evidence is showing is that creatine can actually, kind of improve and offset some of the negative impacts on the brain from a night of sleep deprivation. Especially in these mega dose forms. Okay, so mega dose in this case is about 0.35 grams per kilogram of body weight. So, for the average individual, it's going to be anywhere from 25 to 30 grams. And there's been some studies on this that have shown that it's improved cognitive performance and improved processing speeds compared to placebo, right? The brain uses creatine and we, again, the evidence is still, the researchers are still trying to figure out the right protocols here, when to take it, how to take it. But evidence has shown that those higher doses can actually force creatine into the brain and be able to then use that extra, kind of needed energy to improve, the various markers of cognitive functioning and processing speeds. Some things to consider here is like that's an acute setting. Okay, one night of sleep debt, maybe even if we go into more of like jet lag things where you are traveling and you're all out of whack with time zone changes and all this type of stuff. Some people have shown that, maybe taking a large 20, 30 gram dose of creatine during that setting can improve their ability to function throughout the day. And really kind of, again, it's offsetting some of the effects of sleep deprivation. It's not going to completely cure it, right? That doesn't mean that we don't now need to sleep 8 hours. We can only sleep 5 and we're all just going to start taking 30 grams of creatine a day. It's more of an acute need versus a chronic, feeding, if you would. Other ways to kind of get into this, right, are caffeine. Everyone loves caffeine. I love caffeine. We want to be smart with our caffeine and just know when we're taking it, how we're taking it, and making sure that it's not going to affect our night's sleep the following night. Okay. 1 to 3 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram. And ideally we take that before noon. If you normally take a second dose, maybe a second cup of coffee, maybe a pre-workout later in the afternoon, you might want to skip that so that you're not just continually repeating this cycle. Other factors are, don't skip the workout for the day. Okay. We don't want to go as hard. We might want to modify a little bit. We may not need to. Okay. If you get into the gym and you're feeling fine and things are going well, just because I told you all these bad things about sleep doesn't mean that we throw everything, the whole training plan out the window and we're just not going to train at all, or we're going to just completely go yoga, no strength, and skip everything, right? You can still train. But if you get into the session, you start warming up and you notice that, hey, things are just not feeling right. I'm a little tired. I feel drowsy. I can physically feel myself being tired. That's when we might want to just go 10 to 20% lighter with our weights. Okay, we might want to shorten the session a little bit. We may want to skip the conditioning that's more glycolytic and more, high intensity stuff, and instead focus on movement quality, instead focus on the aerobic work. Maybe just use it as a recovery day, right? Let's shift back the rest of the week and let's just make today a recovery day. Other ways to kind of combat this are napping. Okay. If at all possible, it's great to be able to take a short nap, not a 2 hour long from 2 to 4 siesta, right? This is a 10, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes max in the afternoon, just to kind of improve alertness and improve your performance without being groggy, right? Something that I will personally do is I'll set an alarm on my watch for about 18 minutes. I know it's going to take me a few minutes to fall asleep. And so ideally it takes me about 4 or 5 minutes to fall asleep. And then I've taken about a 12-hour nap. I wake up, I'm recovered, I'm ready to go. I do that a lot because there's a lot of nights where I just do not get enough sleep. I come home from work, I'm dragging, I don't want to go to the gym. So I'll take a quick short nap, feel a little bit more recovered, a little less groggy, and now let's go hit the gym. Number 4 is to double down on your recovery habits at night, okay? Make sure that we're doing the sleep hygiene tasks that we need to be doing. Okay, we're going to shut off our screens if at all possible. We're going to, make our room colder, right? Around 65, 67, 68 degrees. Dark. Okay, we're going to shut off the TV. We're going to put our phone away. We're going to turn off any external noises. And we want to have a cool, dark, quiet room, right? Set up the environment so that there's no distractions. One of the things that I believe causes sleep deprivation more than anything else, right, is just playing on your phone. And it's not because the screen is impacting your ability to fall asleep, but it's because you're procrastinating. You're doom scrolling. You're looking for the next. I find myself doing this a lot, right? If I'm watching sports or I'm, listening to the news, I'm doom scrolling, looking for that next headline, looking for the next update, okay? And instead, I should be falling asleep. So a lot of times what I'll try to do is, especially when I'm in the mood that I'm just not tired, that I want to scroll, I'm looking for that next dopamine hit, I'll read a book, right? I'll literally light a candle. I think that dim kind of flicker makes me more tired. I'll shut off the screens. I'll make sure that the sports, if I'm listening to the radio, I might listen to the radio, but I'm shutting off screens at least about 30 to 60 minutes prior to bedtime. And then I may supplement with, some magnesium glycinate or L-theanine, if I use those currently, which I do, I use both of those, just to kind of relax the body, relax the mind, and get into this mode where I need to fall asleep because I'm sleep deprived from the night before. There's times when I can sleep 4 hours and I'll feel fine the next night, but then I'll do the exact same thing and I'll sleep 5 hours, right? I did not get the same amount of sleep, and now I'm going on day 3 of being sleep deprived, day 4 of being sleep deprived. And I can start to feel my performance start to suffer even more. Other things, right, that we can do. Number 5 here is hydrate and refuel. Okay. Sleep loss increases your cortisol, and that also increases your water loss. So we want to make sure that we're getting plenty of water throughout the day, making sure that we're starting our morning with electrolytes and protein, trying to limit carbohydrates that are especially sugary, because again, that goes into this whole overeating thing. Our judgment has been impaired. Right? We're going to make more decisions that are probably not the best decisions for us to be making. So we want to make good choices that are we're being cognizant, we're being intentional with our actions, and just mindful of what we're eating, what we're doing, the things that are surrounding it. Right? If you're someone who normally scrolls on your phone while you're eating dinner, maybe let's sit down and eat and enjoy it in peace. Right? Let's focus on being mindful of what we're eating. If you're someone who raids the pantry, right? Let's just be aware, right, that, okay, I'm hungry, I'm going to go open the pantry. Do I really need this cookie, right? Do I really need this Rice Krispie treat? Maybe not. So let's tone it down a little bit and be mindful of what we're doing, the actions that we're taking. So with that, right, knowing that one bad night of sleep isn't going to destroy your gains. It's not going to completely derail your performance, completely derail your progress, but knowing how to come back, right? Knowing how to recover and sleep better the next night is so important, okay? Because that one night does cost you, but there's ways that we can avoid just cascading that problem and multiplying that problem and making it worse and worse, okay? So with that, that's it for today's episode. I appreciate you all for listening. Next week, we'll be diving into more performance, more nutrition topics, and just kind of continuing this deep dive on ways that you as the everyday athlete can continue to improve your life and your training and your performance. All right, so with that wraps up today's episode. Okay, I appreciate you all for tuning in. If you're not already, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And then also go to HageleStrength.com and check out the Performance Edge Network. That is where you'll get a newsletter, you get updated topics and updated information relating to how you as the everyday athlete can improve your performance through nutrition, through training, through sleep, okay, through supplementation, all these various things. Once again, thanks for listening. I look forward to seeing you all next week, and you take care.